Howdy folks, Shell Presto here, back with part 2 of our Christmas story and drawing featuring Meteora and the Atomic Ranger. There's also some scrapbook paper crafting involved. If you're here for the story and you missed part 1, I recommend you go back and check that out first. There's a link in the description. If you're just here to watch me draw and color a guy who glows in the dark wearing a nice suit, well, you're in the right place. But you're also jumping into the middle of a story, so you've been warned. So, without further ado, back to the story. Eventually, he broke away, placing the book back in the bag with a whispered,
"Really great."
"It's okay that you didn't get me anything besides the soda," she blurted, her voice tense in an admirable but failed attempt to hide her disappointment. He didn't doubt that she meant it, though. "Please don't worry about it." He huffed and shook his head.
Danica, please. I was joking before. Of course I got you something besides pop.
Her mouth made a quiet little O before she blushed. No one could ever tell when he was joking. He set the bag at his feet and reached into the pocket of the soft, brown leather jacket he seemed to wear everywhere despite his never feeling cold. As his fingers clasped around the sturdy, square box, he hesitated. Maybe the gift was too boyfriendy. Maybe that was okay, especially on Christmas. She definitely deserved it, and he did set out to make her feel special. "Should I close my eyes?" she joked, sensing that hesitation. He bought the gift weeks ago. How had he not yet figured out what he wanted to say with it?
I guess I just don't want you to get the wrong idea.
She made a face like she'd put a cough drop in her mouth, thinking it was candy. This was when being with her was hard. He had a great swell of things he wanted to tell her, and each one would push them closer to a relationship. In his mind, he was carefully laying them out on a table, examining each one, and trying to choose the safest phrases to articulate why he wanted her to feel special without conveying that he wanted her. After a while of looking confused, she giggled. "So long as it's not deodorant, I think we'll be okay, Alan." She wasn't laughing at the misdirection. She was laughing at his hesitation. The quality of her jokes directly matched his finesse at conveying his more interpersonal thoughts.
Sorry.
His voice was only a notch softer, but it was a notch she noticed. "Alan." She brought her hands up to her face, folded them, wrung them slightly. If he didn't talk fast, she might reach out to encourage him. Today wasn't the day for that. He forced himself to start talking.
I wanted to get you something that would make you feel special without. You deserve.
He shook his head, cleared his thoughts, started again.
If you'd have told me in spring, after everything that happened, the yellow skin, the superpowers, Path trying to kill me, Path killing my parents. I was lost after that, Danica. I lost my family, my home. I lost myself. If you'd have told me that things would be okay, that I'd find some direction again, I wouldn't have believed you. No, I didn't believe you, but you kept saying it. And you wouldn't leave me alone. And
He was amazed at how calm his body felt when his mind was flustered. There were no more sweaty palms, no rushed breathing. Her posture had relaxed. Her fingers, tipped with red and green, sparkly nail polish, softly rested on her lip and chin as she listened with rapt attention.
The Promethean patched me up, fixed the reactor shielding, gave me a job despite looking like I belonged in the Sentinel's personal hit list. He fixed me physically. I can't thank him enough for that. But the mental game, creating a new normal when everything was just new and not a good new, that was you. That was all you. So, this might seem a little overboard or out of place, but I'm just trying to say thanks.
As he pulled the velveted clamshell case, which had completely filled his pocket, from it, he realized he hadn't adequately emphasized a just friends angle like he had planned. It wasn't because he forgot, but because he no longer wanted to. There wasn't a place in his speech for it, was there? She wasn't just his friend. She was everything. And maybe she needed him today, but she wouldn't someday. He could be content to be by her side, at arm's length, until she saw that. But he couldn't lie and say they were just friends on Christmas Eve. She wasn't looking at the box at all, but was instead breathing slowly into her hands, which cupped her mouth, her eyes fixated on his face. Alan. The word was an unsure, muffled whimper, the likes of which he'd never heard her utter. He wanted to reach out and stroke her face or her hand. Instead, he forced words out of his mouth again, trying to ease the pressure. He swallowed hard, an unfamiliar feeling.
You're supposed to look in the box before you react, Annika.
She coughed a nervous giggle and opened the box with quaking hands. It was a set: bracelet, necklace, earrings. There were warm gray and light blue jewels in them, and they looked like a cross between sunbursts and snowflakes. Danica didn't wear jewelry on a day-to-day basis, so he picked something for a special occasion, something like Ephemera would be wearing at dinner tonight. He didn't have Amp's money. They weren't exactly diamonds, but he didn't go cheap either. The bands and chain had a modern, nearly black coating that seemed almost sporty and made it easy for him to picture on her. Oh, Alan. Her lips were a tense line, not the smile he anticipated. He put his hands in his pockets. He just wasn't sure what to do. She sniffled and closed her eyes tightly. This is really pretty. He laughed once, incredulously.
You look miserable.
And if he wasn't Alan Adams, it would have been an exclamation. Her sleeve mocked at her glossy eyes, and then she hugged the box to her chest. I'm really happy. She leaned in toward him until her forehead touched his overly warm chest. He instinctively put a careful hand on her shoulder, giving small, chaste, there caresses. And then they stayed there, suspended by 2 points of contact. A few inches of forehead resting on his navy blue t-shirt, his hand warming her shoulder through her sweater. She found her voice again, but it was small. I'm just really happy you're doing okay. I'm really happy you stayed and joined the team. She wiped her eyes and pulled back, only because she wanted to see his. And her tear-filled gaze was more intimate, more telling than any gift could be. I'm really glad you're here, Alan Adams. He removed his hand from her shoulder, put it back in his pocket. He looked away, out at the city. It was dark now, with specks of light illuminating the landscape of buildings like square stars. Alan frowned, his glowing reflection shockingly crisp against the otherwise clear window. What was he doing here with this girl? What was he doing to her? There were a couple flurries cutting lazy, back-and-forth paths past the window, leading his eyes back into the expectant gaze of the woman before him. She had removed the bracelet from the case and had it against her wrist, fumbling with the open clasps.
Here, I'll help.
He took the first 2 of 4 tiny clasps between his thumbs and forefingers. Then he fumbled, the creases across his brow growing deeper until he sighed, and they both laughed.
Nope, I won't. I'm bad at this.
You hold the bracelet in place and that end of the chain, and I'll do the clasp. And she did, and they laughed more. Then she wiped away the last lingering moisture on her cheek and stared at her new token of affection. Did you pick it yourself? He shrugged.
The lady at the counter only gave me a few choices. But yeah, I thought they'd look good on you.
She batted her eyelashes at that, unconsciously, he thought. He watched the red come into her cheeks slowly, like a sunrise, as her blue eyes flicked between the bracelet and his face until they settled into another long, endearing quiet. Eventually, with a newfound cheer and a touch of come-hither huskiness, she asked, "You sure you won't come to my folks for Christmas Eve dinner?"
No, but I guess I'll wear this out with Mateo and company,
He lifted the bag for emphasis.
instead of dressing as a stoplight like I planned.
His ability to say it without even a hint of a smile or emphasis was admirable. She frowned and looked at the bracelet, suddenly tempted to go out and dress up just so she could wear the whole set and be with Alan longer. "Maybe I should join you guys,"
No,
he interjected.
your folks like me. I'm not going to let you change that by ditching them. You can wear that on New Year's at that Compass Society shindig.
He paused, confused.
Why do we go to that? We're not Compass Society, are we?
She shrugged. "My dad's a member. Promethean and Ephemera are. A lot of it is getting roped in because of family."
Okay, then why am I going?
"Because I said so." Although, I guess officially you're now Promethean's bodyguard or something like that. Anyway, what time are you doing dinner with them tomorrow?
Just Promethean, actually. Amp and Ephemera are doing her folks' house. Noon.
And after that? He tapped the side of the gift bag.
Slaughter Dome of the Sky Lizards, I guess.
She puffed her cable knit covered chest and put a hand on her hip. "Good. I'll stop over at 5. Due to his everglow, his pupils didn't contract. It hid his surprise. There'd be nowhere indoors open on Christmas Day, and it would be far too cold for Danica to be outside.
You'll be coming from your folks?
"Mm-hmm,"
Stay there.
he said.
I'll visit in the evening. I bought Pop for your dad, too, and I wanted to ask him if Hydra Man really beat the Promethean in chess. Seems there may be some information missing from that story.
"Shouldn't you just ask the Promethean?"
I will tonight. But I want an unbiased third-party account.
She shook her head and chuckled. "I hate to tell you, but my dad has very strong opinions about Hydro Man. Although, he will be glad to see you." "So will I." Alan coughed.
We should probably head back in before everyone starts going their separate ways.
He gripped the doorknob in his amber hand, but hesitated. He never liked leaving her hanging when she put herself out there, even if getting wrapped up with a guy like him would be abysmal for her. But she'd bared more of her soul to him tonight. He was human enough to recognize that.
And Danica?
His next words were heavy with the weight of his past, but they were true.
I'm not happy about how I ended up here, but I am glad to be here.
He couldn't shake the gruffness from his voice, but he forced a smile for her.
Merry Christmas.
Those knowing, happy eyes sparkled back at him, and his smile melted into something more genuine. "Happy Christmas, Alan." Okay, I hope you folks enjoyed that. I know I enjoyed writing it for you. Now, I suppose we should talk a bit about the art. You may have noticed in the beginning, but most of the footage of me penciling Atomic Ranger is on the cutting room floor. My camera went autofocus happy for some strange reason. I like you folks, so I wasn't about to subject you to that jump-heavy, eye-straining torture. But if you guys want to see how I lay out and pencil guys, let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to toss more male figure drawing in my 2019 lineup. The coloring was a standard coloring job. It's very hard to get super dark blacks, but still have a range of shading with Copic markers, so I was a bit disappointed with the contrast on Alan's suit. I think it looks more dark gray than black, but overall, I'm very happy with how this turned out. Alan looked a little off by the time I finished, and after my husband and I stared at the drawing long enough, we realized it was because Alan's head was a little big for heroic proportions. So at the end of the video, I show the finished drawing as it is in real life, and a version where I do touch-ups and a seamless background on the computer. And you'll see the subtle change makes Alan look a little better and a little more stereotypically superheroic in proportions. I think the hardest part of a project like this, where you're making paper frames and stuff to add to a drawing, is the measuring. I recommend using a T-square or triangle when making paper frames so your squares are as close to perfectly square as possible with real 90-degree angles. Also, when figuring out how much of a margin you want to leave, for example, how much red I wanted showing between the black frame and the drawing, I eyeball it against both sides of the ruler. Even though I live in America and use inches for measuring, sometimes I find the measurement I want can be more easily figured out when I use centimeters. Anything that makes your life and math a little easier is a good thing to consider. Other little tips include using a touch of marker or pen on the edges of the figures I cut out, so that you don't see the white line of the paper if you view this piece from an angle. But be careful to use a light color. I used a brown that matched the sepia pen on Danica's shoulder instead of a skin tone, and some of the brown eked into her shoulder. I used colors that matched the coloring job, like the gold of Alan's face, not the sepia brown line work after that. You'll see when I cut the center out of the frame, I put a slit in the very center with an X-Acto knife. Be careful with those, folks. And use scissors to cut outward instead of trying to start right on the perimeter. I find I get straighter edges this way. Sometimes starting on the line creates a bit of a jagged texture or a bump that I don't like. So starting dead center eliminates that problem. Oh, and always remember to put a couple pieces of thick scrap paper down below what you're working on if you do use an X-Acto knife, because you don't want to cut your table. I used removable tape on this piece so that I could pull it apart in the future, and I drew Atomic Ranger and Meteora separately because, well, I know some of you Ascension Epoch fans may want to see a version of this drawing where the other point of this love triangle is standing with Meteora instead. And that can be made into a future video if you Skyman fans light up the comments. As the finishing touch, I wanted something with words on it to adorn the frame and give it the polish of a scrapbook feel. I went through and considered lots of the different pre-made pieces that were in this scrapbook paper book, but in the end, the text either just didn't feel right or the piece was too large and covered up too much of Meteora's dress. So I took one of the blank paper tags and wrote my own script with a gold gel pen and the same metallic purple colored pencil that I used on Danica's dress for emphasis. And, as usual, I want to remind you folks that the characters I read about today, Meteora and the Atomic Ranger, are in the Challenger Foundation, the group of heroes featured in my and my husband's book series, Challenger Confidential. We've got one book already out in the series, Copper Knights and Granite Men. Atomic Ranger appears in that book, and both he and Meteora appear in future books in the series, which Mike and I have underway. If you'd like to support this channel, please consider picking up a physical or digital copy of Copper Knights and Granite Men on Amazon.com or other online book retailers. Or, if you are not a reader, you could also leave me a tip directly through PayPal. The link to my tip jar is in the description. I really hope you folks enjoyed this video, my little gift to you. If you liked it and want to reciprocate, remember, the best and easiest present to give a YouTuber like myself is clicking that thumbs up button, leaving a comment, and subscribing. I'm very thankful to all of you that do. Please let me know if you enjoyed this story and video, and let me know what you'd like to see on this channel in 2019. And don't forget, you can share the link to this video on your own social media if you thought it was cool and want to let your friends know about it. Most of all, though, I wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. I hope you get to spend some good times with the special people in your life, or at least get to kick back and relax with some cocoa and comfort movies. Don't forget those marshmallows, they're holiday cheer incarnate. And if you're looking for a movie, I recommend The Muppet Family Christmas, which is my personal favorite, or The Christmas Toy, which is tied for my favorite, but a lot harder to find. Anyway, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Presto, over and out. I think how a person decorates their tree says a lot about them. Our tree is an eclectic mishmash of Godzillas and cute animals, superheroes, and hand-me-downs from my and my husband's parents and grandparents. Among those hand-me-downs is this number, which at first glance is adorable bears hugging a pack of adorable penguins. That's all well and good, until you stare at it long enough and realize that some of the penguins' heads are either growing out of or mounted on the bear's feet, which takes this from awe to mildly disturbing. I still like this ornament. I think it's quaint and bizarre and therefore unique. But I want to know who designed this and what they were thinking. Okay, that disturbed your holiday enough. Let's clear our visual palettes and look at this festive Spider-Man for a minute. So, do you folks have any bizarre hand-me-down ornaments? I have to say that one day I'm going to track down one of those Santa Claus centaurs. Now that's a bizarre ornament I want on my tree. Here's one of my favorites. I mean, just one of my favorite ornaments, so you can look at something nice for Christmas. But especially this year. It's just an ornament I made from a kit with Snoopy, but this is my dog, Samantha, who we lost this year. She was a good dog, quiet. And she looked fluffy like a puppy, even when she was 18. And to end on the highest cute note possible, here is an adorable snow family getting a snowcat. So that's all from me, folks. Hope you got some warm fuzzies from this, and have a cool Yule. Presto, over and out.